If we look at remote sensing, we would find it's a powerful technique because it is actually used by different fields like the environmental field, engineering fields, hydrological fields, or soil fields to do a lot of functions or to do a lot of things. And if we just concern about the application of remote sensing to monitor desertification, you would find that remote sensing can be used to monitor like wind erosion. You can also monitor the desertification due to salinity. And here, for example, an example is basically what is done in Al-Batani areas. You know that a lot of areas in Al-Batani area are undergoing this process of salinization and desertification due to salinity. So you can monitor that using remote sensing and collecting the maps and comparing them between, for example, 1970 all the days to 2020. You can also use remote sensing to monitor the overgrazing areas. And the application of this, for example, in Oman, you can do it in Salalah, where you have a vegetation that can be overgrazed over the time. So you can look at the vegetation pattern, whether it's recoverable, whether it is increasing or decreasing, and so on. You can also do a monitoring to the sedimentation. And if you want to look at this, you can, for example, link it to the situation that happens in the dams. So when the soil is eroded from the upstream, it will be actually settled in the downstream, for example, in the dams. And you know these sedimentations would affect the infiltration and many other things in that particular place. So you can monitor the amount of sediments and the extent of sedimentation using remote sensing. You can also do it to monitor the soil erosion due to water, like the gullies. And you can also do it to monitor the burnt areas, like what is happening in Australia. You can monitor the burnt forest in the areas there. And here is actually a map showing you the examples of monitoring aeolian desertification, which means it's desertification due to the wind erosion in China. So it's really. Now let's move to the other technique or method, which is basically based on the expert's opinion. So a fundamental question you might ask yourself here is, who is an expert? Well, an expert is basically a scientist in a specific field. For example, we have a soil science expert which has a specific background and knowledge about the soil and a specific field of soil, for example, soil physics or soil microbiology and so on. Or you might have another expert which is actually an environmentalist and he's specialized in the vegetation. So the expert has a specific knowledge in a specific field. And here actually the expert uses his experience and knowledge to quantify the degree of desertification. For example, how the expert is being used as an assessment technique. So the expert goes into the field with his knowledge and experience, and then he would look at the indicator which has an experience on it. If he's a soil science expert, then he would look at the soil properties and the things that in the soil can tell you whether it's undergoing desertification or not. So he's using his perception and knowledge to quantify the degree of desertification. And this quantification is basically a qualitative. It's not a quantitative because he is not measuring something with an instrument. He is using his experience and knowledge to judge whether this area is undergoing desertification or not. And then he can link it to the degradation process, he can link it to the other sustainability factors like the productivity of the land, the biological functions, declination, and so on and so on and so on. So can we say this method is really a perfect method? Well, from the previous example that we described about in 80s, when they used experts' opinion to judge on the area, the Sahelian area, we saw that expert opinion was also criticized. Why? Because by its nature, it is a qualitative technique. It's a qualitative technique, and therefore it is subjected to errors. It's not something that has been measured by instrument, a very precise like the field. No, it's based on his qualitative assessment. And because of that, you can even find that if you bring this expert today into that land and you bring him tomorrow, the same person to the same land, he might give you a different assessment, because his knowledge and perception might change with time. And that's why it is not very precise technique. Now to the other technique, which is basically land user perspective. Now, land user perspective is a very important thing, and if we ignore it, we will miss a lot of information. Why? Because asking the people who live in that particular place would tell you exactly the real situation, and it will tell you whether the people perceive this as a problem or not, because they are the one who live over there. And therefore, if you ignore them, you might even end up with suggesting something that would not tell you the exact problem, or people would not actually accept the solution. So that's why it should be really involved in this process. And when we talk about land user perspective, it involves all stakeholders. What we mean by all stakeholders? For example, you have the landowner, and you have the farmer itself, if the farmer is not the landowner, is not the owner of the land. And then you have also the local government there, and the government. So you will bring all of these stakeholders together in one place, like what you see here in the picture, like this one like a conference, and then you would talk to them, you would interview them, and you would tell them what you are suggesting as a solution for the problem. And then they will tell you what they feel and whether the solution is accepted or not, and then you can come up with a consensus. You can come up with an agreement that, okay, this is what they understood and this is the solution that they would accept. So you would see that this kind of assessment based on land user perspective has a lot of advantages. Number one, you will get a realistic measurement based on the actual things that happening in the field, because you would ask the people who live over there. Secondly, this kind of assessment would integrate all the client or all the stakeholders. As I told you, you would bring all the people who are involved in that particular land. You will bring, for example, the farmer, you will bring the people in that village, you will bring the local government and also the government. All of them would stay in the same place, and then you would talk to them, and then you come up with a conclusion that all of them agree with it. And the other and the very important thing, that the solution would be accepted, because you involve the people, you listen to them, and they feel that they are important and they can be even part of the solution, like what you see in the picture here, which is taken from Morocco. These are old people, and they actually perceived later on and become convinced that desertification is a problem, and to solve it they have to grow vegetation. So the government at this situation just distribute for them the trees, or themselves they can actually bring the trees and grow it. So when the people feel that it is important, they participate themselves into the solution. And the other thing, that since it's a bottom-top approach, It means that, as you can see from this picture of the brain, that you did not impose your ideology on them and ignore what they think, but you would ask people to suggest and so on, and therefore they will feel that you are listening to them, and they will feel that they are important, and therefore their acceptability will be very high. Now, I would give you an example of how the land user perspective is really very important. So we have here in Samail, for example, we have actually a very big wadi. Samail Wadi is really very big, and it can really create a lot of damages. So in 2007, like Gono happened, and then the amount of rain was very, very high, so the wadi becomes really very huge. And then what happens when the wadi flow? It usually disconnects the upper part and the bottom part of the wilaya. So we have the hospitals, the police stations, the schools, all of them or most of them exist in the upper part. So now the area downstream, منطقة السفالة, are disconnected. And not only that, so it's not only that, but the area also was flooded by the wadi. So later on they decided that, okay, to solve this problem and this disconnection between the area, they will have to build a bridge that would actually allow the water to pass beyond the road, and then everything would be connected. So when they wanted to build this bridge, they actually did not talk to people, and they just come and they designed the pipes, they designed the bridge, and they did it. Next rainfall event, I don't remember, it was Fit or something. The wadi came, and the bridge they built, it was very small. So what happens? It actually the plant leaves مثل النخيل وما عرفمو, they actually blocked the wadi, and therefore all the wadi goes into the houses, and all the houses were flooded, the farms were destroyed, and so on. Here it gives you an indication that when they build it from a top-bottom approach without involving people, they missed a lot of information. But if they came down into the area and asked, especially the old people, they will tell them that, okay, we feel that what you are building is really very small because you don't know this wadi. We know it, we live here. And then they would tell them something realistic, and based on that they can suggest with them, and they can come up with a solution together. You know what happened next? Now, when they involve people and ask them, they have to build a bigger bridge. And at that time, they have to buy a lot of farms, which are actually at the wadi. So when they came to people and asked them to sell them their lands, they did not explain to them the importance of this bridge, and they did not convince them. So some of them did not accept the idea of selling their lands. And then the government has to pay huge money to them, and even like they have like to do a law to make these people accepting the payment and selling their lands for this national project. But again, when you involve the people, when you come and ask them, listen to them, explain to them, they will feel the importance of the problem, and therefore they will participate. The disadvantage of this method is basically that it can be a bias. يعني ويش؟ يعني مثلا تروح عند شخص وتسأله تقول له مثلا كيف تحس بأن هل هذه الأرض يعني فيها مشكلة أو لا؟ فيجي يحكي لك على حسب الظروف اللي هو فيها، بيقول أوه كانت هذه الأرض في الأول تنتج والحين صارت ما تنتج، وليش؟ لأنه هو يعني حاس بأنه هو ما قاس يستفيد. فيحاول مرات يعطي هذه المعلومات اللي هي مرات أن تكون خاطئة، على أساس أنه يعرف ممكن بأنه الحكومة قد تدفع له فلوس، قد تعوضه، قد تسوي شيء، تعطيه أشياء بلاش وكذا، فيعطي معلومات خاطئة. من كذا يعني مرات أنها تكون bias. Therefore you have to be very careful to ask some of the questions which are indirect، لكنها في النهاية تخبرك المعلومة اللي أنت تريدها. That's why you have to be even careful when using this method. So that's all for this lecture. I hope that you enjoyed it. And the most important thing for you here is to understand the concept of monitoring and the different and the differences between each technique, the advantages and the disadvantages, but you have to understand them again more than memorizing them. You have to understand them. And if you have any question, you can at the beginning tell your group members the amazing things, the most difficult things. Let your group members or friends try to explain to you. If you did not get it, you are most welcome to email me or discuss what we have taken in this lecture during the discussion time, inshallah. So I hope you a very nice day and see you. Take care. Bye.